Jumping over to crypto vol. Realize vol having a dip into the weekend as it often does, but then bouncing violently on the wild moves that we saw around the war headlines and the various strikes from US and Iran. So we did end up with about a 10 vol point pop in realized on the week. BTC front end vol did find some support as Gamma performing a bit better than it has done recently, and Ethereum vols were drifting slightly week on week as well. Carry has flipped into negative on both assets, as you can see these bars flipping below the axes. So showing that in general, being short Gamma has been a relatively tough ordeal. You can see that on the OHLC charts as well over the last week. You know, see the ranges, see the breach of the implied move, one there on the 22nd, again on the upside on the 23rd. So a couple of breaches on Bitcoin. Ethereum though slicing down below that 24 area with a 1, 2, 3 breaches on the downside and then a violent swing back up, breaching on the upside. So Ethereum continues to have the higher volatility, as we are well aware. Markets look like they might have put an important bottom in here around 98k on Bitcoin. So I am pretty optimistic. The geopolitics do appear to be dying down. Markets may now then be able to focus on all the positive sort of policy shifts that are going on as this kind of crypto space is being embraced by the powers that be, right? And things are generally getting rolled out. All right, looking at term structure, you can see it here. A little bit of a pop in the front end on Bitcoin. So flattening there in the front, but still generally in contango. Whereas you look at ETH, still inverted, but giving back some of the inversion there as vol softening across the front part of the curve. Looking at the time series, you can see what went on here. Generally, most of the week, we're seeing contango on Bitcoin. We did see that front end obviously then jump, but gave it back pretty quickly. And then Ethereum here, inverted, had a brief period of contango into the weekend and then jumped back to inverted. It's kind of stayed there. So they're the waves of that front end vol bid that you often see. Chart is quite interesting on skew. Shows that weekly skew moving to as far as -6 on Bitcoin and -10 on ETH. So quite a steep put skew as markets started to break down on that US strike. But it gave it back quickly, moving back up towards calls as you saw that red line going back up pretty sharpish. But overall, you can see we have seen a bit of a bid come back for calls there in the 1 month as well, moving quite steadily higher, as was the 3 month and even the long end on the 6 month. So seeing a shift higher in call skew across the curve there on Bitcoin, whereas things are a little bit more muted there on Ethereum. You can see that here on our term structure skew charts, a bit of a shift higher across the whole curve on Bitcoin, and then Ethereum actually the opposite this week, moving from the red down to the blue, where the front end hitting -4 on puts. So, you know, kind of retracing from that -10, but still priced slightly for puts. And then as we get to August, it flips back into call premium there. All right. So Ethereum put skew coming back in the front end as we broke down that key support at 2,400 and the market got a bit spooked due to the strike over the weekend. Both curves, though, as you can see, are inflecting back into call premium as we go a bit further down. So July is neutral. August has got call premium on Bitcoin. And August is kind of the inflection point there on ETH as we start to go back into call premium. So skew curve still saying, yeah, any weakness is short term, going to be short lived. And looking 3 months out, you still want to be on the long side, basically. All right. And then looking at the relative value, we did see a little bit of pullback in the spread. ETH Bitcoin, as the spot continues to consolidate and trade in a bit of a range, it has managed to avoid falling back into the downtrend channel that it was in, but it hasn't really got going on the upside. So it's kind of in no man's land, but the market's taken that as an excuse to offer out some front end ETH vol, and Bitcoin is kind of held. So you see the front end drift, but look at that long end, December, March, and even September, barely moving, right? And those are being priced at around 20 plus vols. So that's quite a widespread, quite stubborn, refusing to really do much because realized vol does still remain pretty elevated in ETH relative to Bitcoin. But, you know, for me, I still think selling some December Ethereum vol, maybe via some strangles and owning some Bitcoin vol against it doesn't look like a crazy idea. I could see that spread once Ethereum does kind of find its equilibrium. I could see that spread coming back to 15 and even lower quite easily. All right, looking at the RV skew curve, you can see here it all has obviously moved back down quite considerably. We were looking at 2 to 3 vols of call premium in Ethereum relative to Bitcoin, and now that's collapsed back the other way. So this front end definitely more put bid for Ethereum, and then it cancels out to about flat as we get to August, and it trades pretty flat around 0 basically. Okay, I would say BTC upside is looking quite cheap if you think there's a break to the upside coming. If you do think the fourth wave correction is done and we're going to get thrust higher to new highs, well then those calls on a 40 vol don't look crazy expensive. But we may be in a new paradigm where when you do take out new highs in Bitcoin, you don't get these big explosive moves. You get more steady kind of grinds higher because there's a lot of institutional money that's just absorbing and slowly buying basically. So it's not retail spec. There's not all this like leverage longs coming in. It's just consistent buying. So does that mean vol doesn't react that much to new highs? Maybe, but personally, I think if you want to wait for new highs and then buy some call spreads, I think you're going to get some half decent leverage to that break higher basically, right? And from a chart perspective, it does look like it's game on for the rally, especially if we take out the highs. All right, guys, those are my thoughts around crypto vol and what's been going on in the last week. I'll leave you there. I'll catch you guys here next week. Cheers.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for making it to the end of the video. Remember, this is just a little taster of what we do at Options Insight. To get access to all our research, including my in-depth vol market insights, flows and positioning report, and my portfolio trades, and a whole lot more, you can sign up at options-insight.com. I'll see you soon.